I still remember the exact sound my phone made that morning. It wasn't the usual quiet notification I got from my church group or one of my old friends. It buzzed over and over, until it almost vibrated off the kitchen counter. I wiped my wet hands on my apron, thinking something terrible had happened. In a way, it had. I looked at the screen and saw hundreds of messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. One text simply read, "Margaret, is this really you?" Underneath it was a video link. My stomach tightened before I even pressed play. By the time the clip ended, I realized that millions of strangers had already decided exactly who I was. The video lasted less than 30 seconds. I was standing in my son's dining room, quietly setting the table for dinner. My hands moved carefully, placing each plate exactly where it belonged. I folded cloth napkins the way my late husband had always liked. Then the camera turned toward me, and my daughter-in-law laughed. "Our live-in maid is finally good for something." Someone behind the camera laughed with her. "So cheap," another voice said. "She worked for free." The video ended before anyone could hear me softly say, "Dinner is ready." That single sentence never made it into the upload. Within 24 hours, the internet had turned me into a joke. People stitched the video, added music, created memes, and argued about whether I looked like a servant or a grandmother. Thousands called me pathetic. Others pitied me. No one knew the truth. Not even my own son. I had been living with Daniel and his wife, Vanessa, for 8 months after recovering from hip surgery. Daniel insisted I move in because he worried about me living alone after my husband passed away. I never wanted to become anyone's burden, so I cooked, cleaned, folded laundry, watered the garden, and quietly took care of the house while they worked. I thought I was helping. Vanessa always smiled when Daniel was around. She thanked me for dinner. She complimented my cooking. But the moment he left for work, something changed in her eyes. She began leaving dirty dishes on purpose. She criticized how I folded towels. Sometimes she would walk past without saying good morning. I kept telling myself she was stressed. Marriage was hard. Work was exhausting. Maybe I was simply from another generation. Then little things started disappearing. Family photo albums were moved into storage. Pictures of my late husband vanished from the hallway. The antique clock he restored with his own hands suddenly sat in the garage, under old boxes. Whenever I asked about them, Vanessa would smile politely. "I'm just redecorating." Something inside me whispered that it wasn't decorating. It was erasing. Still, I stayed silent, because Daniel looked happy. And after losing my husband, watching my son smile felt more important than defending my pride. The viral video changed everything. Neighbors stopped making eye contact. The cashier at my grocery store looked at me with sympathy. Even strangers recognized my face. I considered leaving before Daniel came home that evening. Instead, I packed one small suitcase and placed it beside the front door. When Daniel walked in, he looked confused. "Mom, where are you going?" Before I could answer, his phone began ringing. Then another call. Then another. His coworkers had seen the video. He watched it standing in the hallway. I saw every emotion cross his face. Confusion, disbelief, embarrassment. Then something far worse. Silence. He slowly looked at Vanessa. "What is this?" She laughed nervously. "It was just a joke." Daniel didn't laugh. "You called my mother the maid. It was only for social media. You humiliated her. Everyone posts things. Not like this." I quietly picked up my suitcase. "I'll go home." Daniel grabbed the handle before I could lift it. "No." His voice cracked. "No, Mom. You're not leaving." That should have been the end of it. It wasn't even the beginning. 3 days later, a lawyer called me. At first I assumed it was spam. Instead, he asked if we could meet regarding my late husband's estate. I was confused because the estate had already been settled 2 years earlier. Or so I thought. When I arrived at his office, he placed a thick envelope on the table. "There was an instruction from your husband." My hands began shaking. He requested this file remain sealed, unless public humiliation or financial exploitation involving you occurred. I stared at him. "I'm sorry, what?" The lawyer gently slid a handwritten letter toward me. It was my husband's handwriting. I recognized every curve of every letter. My eyes filled with tears before I read the first sentence. "If you're reading this, someone has forgotten your worth." I couldn't breathe. He explained that years before his death, my husband had quietly transferred ownership of several commercial buildings into a trust. I never knew. Neither did Daniel. The trust generated substantial monthly income, enough that I would never need financial help from anyone. But there was one condition. If I ever chose to continue financially supporting family members after being intentionally humiliated or manipulated, the trust managers were instructed to deny those requests. Instead, every dollar would remain under my sole control. My husband knew something I didn't. He once told the lawyer, "Margaret forgives too easily." I cried the entire drive home, not because of the money, because even after death, he had tried to protect me. That evening Daniel sat beside me in the living room. I didn't know. I know. I'm sorry. I know. He lowered his head. I failed you. No, I whispered. You believed the wrong person. Before either of us noticed, Vanessa had been standing in the hallway listening. She walked into the room, pale and trembling. I didn't think. No, Daniel interrupted. You didn't. She apologized through tears. For the video. For the jokes. 4 months of disrespect. For treating me like someone who belonged beneath her. I listened quietly. Then I asked one question. When you filmed me, what did you think I would feel after watching it? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Because there was no answer that could erase what she'd done. The internet eventually moved on. It always does. Another scandal replaced mine. Another viral joke found another victim. But our family couldn't scroll past what happened. Vanessa deleted every social media account she had. Daniel insisted we attend family counseling together. For the first time in months, people stopped pretending. They started telling the truth. A few weeks later, I moved back into my own home. Not because I was angry. Because I remembered something my husband wrote near the bottom of that letter. Love your family, but never let anyone mistake your kindness for your value. That sentence now hangs framed beside my front door. Visitors often ask why it's there. I simply smile. They don't know that the woman millions laughed at wasn't a maid. She was a wife who had been deeply loved. A mother who had quietly sacrificed everything. And a woman whose greatest inheritance was never the money hidden in legal papers. It was finally seeing herself the way the person who loved her most always had.